bevo.com.
Philip, in this economic climate, a lot of CEOs are saying this is a time to really cut costs in the marketing department, whereas media sellers are obviously saying this is a big opportunity to grab market share and spend more. So in your mind, which one is it?
You know, let me dramatize, first of all, the way you put the question in terms of some people want to see it as an era of cost cutting and some want to see it as an era of opportunity. It turns out that two airlines see it differently. Ryanair, in a statement made by the airline, says, boy, I love recessions. This is a golden opportunity. There's going to be weak competitors and we can really take over. Market share gains and all that. It looks like the other airline, EasyJet, its spokesman said, well, we're going to be conservative. We're going to go easy on that and be careful. So who's right? Well, we don't know. It will take some time to tell. And in fact, everything is circumstantial, but I put it this way. When a period like a financial meltdown occurs, when turbulence occurs in the economy, and that will occur more frequently, by the way. I'm not talking about the business cycle. I'm talking about turbulence and chaos. When that occurs, you got to see it in two lights. You have to see it as opportunity for some, and you got to see it as danger and vulnerability for others. Now, I like the firm that sees it both ways. I don't think the president of a company should say, well, we got to just cut costs across the board. That's the worst thing, by the way, across the board. They'll be killing some of their future that way. But if they say, let's now look at the vulnerabilities and protect ourselves, then let's look at the opportunities, then they're beginning to see how to handle it.
But Philip, isn't that half the battle, trying to identify which are the opportunities that are going to make you money versus lose you money?
Well, you know, we're not, Anthony, we're not going to have the CEO just sit down and intuit these things. He's going to draw together some people in the company from the different functions. For example, marketing is that function that should really supply the opportunity side and also the arguments for not cutting the budget. I mean, cutting your budget that creates your sales is a funny thing to do, unless the budget was being wasted in some ways. Certainly, you cut a budget when there's fat, but when it's working for you, if you know how to account for your marketing resources, and by the way, that's the biggest issue today, how do we show accountability for the money we're spending on campaigns? But if you can show accountability, maybe your budget won't be cut. Every marketing head is facing that issue. How to tell the CEO and the CFO that the budget is helping us rather than hurting.
It's a bit silly to cut a cost that's generating you a 300-400% ROI, and that's just killing your profit, isn't it?
The link has to be proven between expenditure and sales and profit results. Yeah. It's easy to prove, by the way, in direct mail, because you know the cost of sending out your mail and offers, and then you know how much response you got, and it's ROI, straightforward. It's very hard to know with 30-second commercials. Unless you set up experimental design, and some companies are playing with that, companies like P&G and Unilever, but otherwise it's more an article of art and faith.
Let's talk about accountability and how to measure the marketing spend. I mean, it's easy, as you said, in direct marketing, direct response, you can measure it, but in non-direct response, direct marketing arenas, how do you identify ROI on your marketing spend where there's intermediaries involved, for example?
Well, the key idea is this. Suppose we can put commercials into neighborhoods, and we have some comparable neighborhoods. I mean, they've been both buying as much as each other. And then we put more budget into one neighborhood and less in another. And then we do recall scores and recognition scores to see if they remember seeing it. But we also see what they spent. You have to also have links to the stores where, like Tesco or whatever, to find out what happened. And then you might say, look, we spent twice as much in this neighborhood than that neighborhood, but they were the same at the beginning, and look at the sales difference. We have to attribute it largely, unless there's other causes, to expenditure differences. That's hard to do, but that's the theory of trying to get some measure on advertising expenditures.
A lot of people are talking about how you should operate in a recession like this, but this isn't just a normal recession, is it? This is something slightly different?
This whole financial meltdown has been a shock to all of us. I hope the U.S. isn't being blamed entirely for it, though it was the result of very loose credit standards and practiced by the U.K. as well, and some other places, and that's why it spread so fast. I'm trying to get at the bottom of what companies should do during such a dire situation. And I'm preparing a book, which is now finished actually, called Chaotix. That's the single word, but the subtitle is The Business of Managing and Marketing in the Age of Turbulence. And we think we have a lot of things to say. It's just too bad we can't get the book out tomorrow. You know how books are. And publishers, it's got to go through the whole routine, and it will probably appear in May. And by the way, if the financial meltdown is over and we don't sell the book, that's fine with us. That's good for the world. However, when it does come out, it's going to talk about the need for companies to do a couple of things. One is to have early warning systems. That will catch things happening that they see but didn't pay attention to. You know how things are, the future's already here in some places, if you could only scope it out. The second thing is we advocate the preparation of scenarios. Good scenario, normal scenario, what if the worst happens? And preparing a strategy for each scenario. Now, you have to still make a choice, and that depends on how much risk you want to take. If you want to take just a little risk, you probably will go after the promising opportunity-loaded scenario and the strategy that goes with it. If you are risk averse, you probably will play safe. So we can't give the advice on what scenario makes sense because it's uncertainty. The whole point is it's uncertain what's going to happen. But at least you've got contingency responses depending on how the world and the economy moves. So we think we're not talking about how you normally operate in a recession, which comes about every so many years. We're talking about even worse things than that. Look at what happens in a Mumbai situation and things you can't predict. And how do you handle your budgets and your people and keep going forward? And what changes do you have to make in your strategies?
So we're talking about disaster planning, really, aren't we?
Disaster planning is a good term, absolutely.
Bevo.com